Chairman, thank you. And again, thank you to the witnesses. There's clearly some different viewpoints on how to move forward best in infrastructure, but we need to hear the full range of options. Clearly, you know, this economy is our #1 concern. Clearly, the President inherited a very poor economy. But now, after 3 years, many of his policies, in my mind, have made things worse. Certainly, the stimulus failed to jumpstart the economy or restore consumer confidence. We were predicted to have a 6.5% unemployment rate today. Clearly, we missed it by a highway mile. The stimulus, after all that money spent, we actually have 2.1 million fewer Americans working today than when the stimulus began. We actually have fewer Americans working than when we began to spend all that borrowed money. Infrastructure was a significant part of the first stimulus, and it was predicted that manufacturing and construction would see the greatest job growth as a result of it. But the opposite proved to be true. Construction jobs were predicted and projected at the end of last year to be a gain of 678,000 jobs in construction. In truth, we still today have lost 903,000 construction jobs. Not gained, lost 900,000 jobs. In manufacturing, at the end of last quarter, we were predicted to have gained 408,000 jobs from the stimulus. Again, we've actually lost more than 600,000 jobs in manufacturing. Clearly, infrastructure in the first stimulus has not stimulated the economy. Today, we face a second round of stimulus in infrastructure again. In this case, the President has proposed a $50 billion infrastructure bank to stimulate job creation. And my question is, and I'll start with Dr. DeRougy. Today, a pretty compelling case has been made that our infrastructure system is a leaky bucket. And before we pour more funding in it, we probably ought to fix those leaks if we want to get the best bang for the buck. I look at your study that was done this year, reading through it, that estimated, because of paperwork, permits, labor laws, environmental assessments that drive out and delay projects, that drives cost overruns in infrastructure. On average, U.S. cost overruns have reached $55 billion annually. So here we have a $50 billion proposed stimulus, second round, versus the prospect that a concerted effort to reduce those delays in that paperwork and the permitting could actually give us a bang for the buck equal or over time larger than the expenditure today. Dr. DeRougy, could you tell us about how you formulated those cost overruns, and is it possible for Congress in a concerted effort to lower that number considerably? So
the study was there are two studies that you're talking about, and neither of them were mine. I was just reporting on them. The cost overrun was a pretty broad study that was done by Danish economists, and they're specialized in planning and infrastructure planning, and they found that overall 9 out of 10 federal public jobs run cost overruns. And the other one is from my colleague Garrett Jones and Dan Rothschild, who looked at the impact on this round of stimulus of the prevailing wage. And they did it two different ways. They did the theory, and then they went and looked and interviewed people who had received stimulus money. And what they found is in fact that people think they would have been able to hire more people if they weren't subjected to these laws. That being said, I mean, while I'm entirely in favor, and even if you're a Keynesian economist, as I said, of getting rid of these prevailing wages law and all the other things that actually artificially increase the cost of infrastructure spending, we really need to remember that it's not going to create jobs. It just can't. And it is because even in the context of Keynesian theories, infrastructure spending takes a lot of time to put in place. It can't be timely. And as such, I think, I mean, your question is a good one, but even if we got rid of all the inefficiency in the system, it would still not be a good idea. Let the private sector do it.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards, comment?
I'd say I have two bullets on sort of different issues. One is the whole issue of jobs. I'd direct your attention, and I can send it to your staff. There's a new report out by Wells Fargo a couple of weeks ago, which was kind of surprising. It was about U.S. manufacturing, and it actually gave a very glowing sort of look at U.S. manufacturing, which kind of surprised me. Their argument is that U.S. manufacturing has gone extremely capital intensive and high tech. They've cut jobs. We know that. But because of that, the end effect is the remaining U.S. manufacturing companies are very productive, actually, in world markets. And they see looking ahead that U.S. manufacturing companies are going to be doing better and better because labor costs in places like China and Brazil keep rising. And U.S. Companies have already made this transition to a very high-tech mode of production. On infrastructure, I would add that the new Brookings study on infrastructure is very interesting. They point out some of the advantages that private infrastructure has over government infrastructure. One of them is in these PPP deals where you get a lot of private finance and management, the private sector, the same private sector company both constructs and then maintains and manages the piece of infrastructure like a bridge over the long term. And by doing that, they can be a lot more efficient from sort of a life cycle point of view. The current system, you've got one company, building it, the government managing.
Sorry, Mr. Edwards, we're running out of time. I apologize, but I appreciate both points. Wish they were somewhere close to the question I asked, but still, I think those are important points to make. Thanks, Chris.
Congressman Hinchey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you.